grade, she was Miss Smith, and she was much louder than that, as I recall. Maybe that was just me, I don't know. But I did want to welcome everybody. Thank y'all for coming. Obviously, with it being Heritage Day, programs like this are the things that we really enjoy being able to have. Having people come, talk about and just remember the heritage of this town. I know if you're sitting here, you love this town, you love what it is now, you love where it's been, how it got to be here, so we appreciate everybody being here. I was asked to kind of introduce y'all to the owners of the building that we are in today. And Mary and Quint Tribe moved in, and I don't have all my dates, but it's been almost 2 years now. That they moved into this building. We were very happy as a town to see somebody like them get it, right? Because if you haven't noticed, whether it's a concert, whether it's an event like today, they have not only come in and done a great job with this gorgeous building, right? I mean, preserving its history, but also making it functional use for a business today. But they've done a great job preserving it, but they are extremely involved in the town. They have been huge assets to the town just by having this building still historical in town. Ms. Langley mentioned it. If you didn't notice it on the way in, the mural that they came in, you didn't look close, it is actually a picture of this building from the early 20th century, right? They actually they had the mural painted from a picture from the early 20th century. So they've done amazing things. They've been extremely involved with the town. Anything that we've asked of them, they have been more than willing to do, including like this today. They are the business of the year for Silver Hill for this past year, and obviously they are the building that we've chosen, that the committee chose to honor this year. So let's go ahead and give them a round of applause. This is Quint with out of camera. Mary's in the back, she's still working. So
Mary's covered up with coffee right now.
So make sure y'all come in and buy coffee, but thank y'all so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to Carl Johnson, and he is going to take it from here. Carl?
My name is Kelly Johnson. I come from up in Wisconsin. I work in vinegar works up there. Every time I go down the street, they say, "Hey boy, what's your name?" I say, "My name is Kelly Johnson. I'm from Wisconsin." And this is where it all started. And for me, I was born 81 and a half years ago up on North Boulevard. And at that time, they called me a smart, come over and slap you on the butt, and later in the day, the doctor come by and see if you had all your fingers and toes, and that's kind of the way it all started. And there's probably I don't see many more in here that were like that. I see my longtime best friend, Neil Linden, back there. He might have gotten that treatment from Miss Smart, but I don't know about Francie and Jared. But just being here, and I went back and looked over some of the information that I had, it was interesting to see. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Silver Hill, then let these folks jump in, or if you got questions, we'll try to answer what we know about that. But Silver Hill started out in 1898, and it was a Svea, or Swedish Land Company, which was located over in the library. They bought a bunch of land from edge of what we call Robertsdale to Fish River and south. And if you read some of their literature back then, they thought they had found the Garden of Eden when they found this area. But they were trying to get away from the north weather, and they came south, and this was an area that would grow crops and that, and so this was just what we still know and cherish today, a good place to live and that. But the land company that sold lots and that, they progressed in that, and I don't know, these guys here know the history, but I do know the history because my dad served as mayor for 30 years, and privilege of mowing the streets when I was a young man. Of course, we didn't have anything but grass streets and that, so, except 104. I can remember 55 being a dirt road and how happy we were when it was being paved and that. But that's what Silver Hill was back then. And y'all may want to jump in and tell a little bit there. And I'll tell y'all a little bit in a minute about the schools and how that, I see a lot of gray hair in here. And for gray hair, if you were born in a rural community in the South, I think your life was about like mine was. I know some of these folks back here, it's centered around three things. It's centered around your church, around your family, and around your school. And that's the way Silver Hill was. And I think that's part of what made Silver Hill what it is today. And I'll let these guys join in.
Mr. Carl, one quick question. Do you have any idea when they first purchased the property, the approximate acreage of what they purchased? Whenever they were trying to come here from Chicago and stuff, what was the area?
I've heard two different things. I mean, compared to the Fairhope colony, and Silver Hill was more, but it was close to what I was told. Now, don't quote me.
Yeah.
That's hearsay. A little less than 5,000 acres. So if you think about the territory from here, where we are, south, down to what, 48? Yeah, County Road 48. Fish River is a boundary. I actually know, because I have a deed that has the property line being the center of Fish River.
Yeah.
Down by the bridge and that. And then out just beyond where the park is.
Yeah.
And one other thing that goes with that, Gerald, and y'all may know this, but you know what the name of the L&N station was in Robertson? Silver Hill. There was no Robertsdale. And Silver Hill Station, yeah, actually have pictures of it with that sign and that. Of course, we all knew the town grew up around the railroad and then Silver Hill progressed. But I'll turn it over to these guys and then I'll add some other stuff to it. If you got a question, don't be bashful.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Carl.
I'm Frankie Kuchera, and I'm a Czechoslovakian. Our folks came here in 1920s. Is when the first Czechs started coming into this area. They had been reading about the Silver Hill area in publications that the Swedish and Norwegian people had put out. And they wanted to come here because they all wanted to farm. So that's how our people got to Silver Hill. Hard to compete with that. But anyway, we've been here all these years and just proud to be in it. But when growing up, we had friends of all three nationalities: the Czechs, the Swedes, and the Norwegians. You know, and I think you can see that out here today. When that parade went down the street, you had Czech flags, you had Norwegian flags, you had Swedish flags. That's where all this, when this started here, they said 30 or 40 years, 39 or 40 years ago. I happened to be the mayor at the time when that started. And what we was doing was trying to raise money for our fire department, kind of a spin-off from Alberta. We've continued to keep this up for all these years. It's been a lot of fun. Today I was just a spectator, but I'm proud to be here to be able to talk to y'all about this. But one of the things Carl was talking about, the depot in Robertsdale, I can remember as a child that there was a man that had cut a whole bunch of the trees that had been planted on along 55 here, the County Road 55, because the railroad was going to come from Loxley through here to Foley. But then when they discovered that there was a creek over here between Silver Hill and Loxley, and the two on the other side, on the south side of Silver Hill, they decided they wanted to move it and stay on more higher land, so they went through Robertsdale and Summerdale on to Foley. So that's why we didn't get a railroad here, and that's probably why we're not a well-traveled spot. But it's good that way, because I love Silver Hill the way it is, you know. I can remember as a child, I'm just 86 years old, so I can remember as a kid, 55 being paid. And I can also remember it being graded with the graders, the big Caterpillar grader and that, going down through there, graded and cut the ditches and all. My grandmother had the ice cream parlor, which is an accounting firm now across the street over there. Like I said, you know, we've been here and been part of Silver Hill all these years. My dad was mayor after Mr. Johnson was mayor. My dad was mayor for 14 years, and I had the honor of serving as mayor of Silver Hill also for 8 years. So I served on the council for 4. But I'm gonna turn it over now a little bit with Jerry and talk about something. Jerry?
Sheriff, how about telling us about PZK and all about the culture and everything that Czech people brought to Silverville?
Okay.
Music.
The PZK Hall, which is built in Robertsdale, and I'll have to start with the Little Hall because PZK is a spin-off from the Little Hall. The Little Hall was built out here southwest of Silver Hill. It started out as a school for the Czech kids, Czechoslovakian kids. You know, it was there, and the kids went to school there, and then when the public school got opened up, they came to Silver Hill to the school here. That was before my time. But the Little Hall was moved to the Silver Hill School, and it became like an auditorium and all, because Silver Hill didn't have that, an auditorium at the time. And then it was, when they was gonna build an auditorium and the gym, they moved it to, over onto the ballpark land, and it stood there till 2011 when a tornado hit it. And then a bunch of us Czechs decided they was gonna tear it down. We said, no, we wanna save it. So the mayor and the council let us save it, and so it's still standing there being used. But the PZK Hall in Robertsdale, they had to have a bigger hall because everybody was doing dances and entertainment and all. The Czechs would have their meetings on the Sunday there and get together. The women would have all kind of pastries and coffee and everything. But the PZK Hall was built strictly for entertainment. It had the best dance hall in Baldwin County, probably in the state, and everything. I played in there a whole lot. Uncle Frank played music in there, and there's probably some in here that had relatives that played in there also. But PZK in Czech stands for Krojský zábavní kroužek. That means Educational Recreational Center. That's what the 3 letters stands for. But anyway, it's still there. It was given from the Czech club, ladies club, to the town of Robertsdale, and they've continued to remodel and do things with it. So that's where it's at today, and it's still being used. Beautiful building.
What kind of instrument did you play?
You what?
What kind of an instrument did you play with that?
Kind of what?
What kind of instrument? He said what playing?
Frank played saxophone.
Okay.
Till his hand got cut off in the corn picker, and then he picked up a trumpet and played it. And I played a clarinet at one time.
All right.
Very good.
I'm Jerry Kostelecki. I was born here in 41 and on 9th Street, and Carl's mother helped my mother for me to be born. I don't know if you knew that. I heard that. Anyway, so, anyway, the other thing, my dad, he actually worked for Mr. Johnson over here. They had a grist mill over here at the pond on 55. There was a grist mill. My dad and uncle worked there for Mr. Johnson. The other things I remember over here, where the parking lot is, used to be Huggins store. And right here, the Huggins, and we used to buy all kinds of things there. Because it was a small convenience store. We didn't have big stores. We had Chandler store over here. That's where the bank is now. When I would go to school, I'd stop at Chandler's. I had a nickel, and I'd buy my Twinkie there, whatever it was, Snowball, I think it was called. And every morning it seemed like I had to have a snowball on the way to school. And, the other thing that when Frankie's dad was mayor, he was also, I think, our chief of police. And we kept track of him because we would stay on the other side of town wherever he was. And we didn't want to get in trouble or get caught being doing what we're doing, okay? So we kept track of him. So that's, and a little bit about the PZK, as Frankie was saying, what it's good for. They actually had plays there. See, Old Country had plays, and they had people that did acting and that. So they had a big stage, and like a door or whatever, trap door. So it was an act. So they did plays there, along with the dances. I remember your local play. We played there as kids, okay? It was lit on the door, floor, and all that stuff. That was the most fun thing to do. Dad and I think it was the Knowltons. We redid the floor. Put an oak floor in there. That was 40 or 50 years ago, thereabouts. And then, it was turned over to us. The school, we went to school here to the old school. And that burned down on November 11th, which was a Veterans Day. We were off for holiday that day. I was in high school already.
What year
High
was that?
school, my first year in high school, when it burned down. All the kids, I think they did not miss a day of school. They went to school at all the churches. This grade went here, this grade went there. No school was missed, if I remember.
What year was that? You said November 11th. What year? 55. I'm here. Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you.
Let's see, I guess that's some of the things I remember about here, okay?
Well, I'm younger than the rest of them, by a little bit. So my childhood growing up was a little bit different. We moved to Silver Hill when I was around 5 years old, and we lived on County Road 52, which is North Boulevard, and we lived on what was called the Rockwell property. When we moved out there, there was us, my cousins on the corner, and then my aunt and uncle on the other side there, and it was actually leased. And I always get these initials wrong. People kind of remember him because he was known for this. That property was leased in 1957 to O.F.E. Winberg to grow satsuma trees on it. You remember that? And in that agreement, he had to put a satsuma tree every 20 foot apart from each other all the way on that property. So when we moved out there were still satsuma trees in that area. In our yard, we still had several satsuma trees until the weather, the winter weather finally killed them. But I want to tell you a little bit about my childhood. Growing up in Silver Hill was a great place to grow up as a child, especially once you got a bicycle. I mean, everybody in town knew everybody. You didn't have to worry about anybody because they were always going to be taken care for and looked out at. And I remember in my younger days, Mr. Mill Klein, Tiger Pond down here, when we'd have a good rain, us kids loved it. And let me tell you why. His pond would overflow and his fish would go down the ditch on the dirt road over there where the ponders and the loams and all lived. And we would go down the ditches and just pick up those fish.
Oh.
And we'd put some of them back in his pond, but then the loams behind them, Dennis Madden had a pond, and Pat Long would take some of those fish and restock that pond. But that was, and we could fish in his pond. He would let us fish in his pond. But then he did something that we just couldn't stand. he decided to fix his pond to where when it overflowed, the fish couldn't get out anymore. So that just killed that. But, but you would ride your bicycle uptown back then, and if you had a dime, you could go to People's Supply and get a slice of bologna. And if they felt real sorry for you, they'd throw you in a slice of cheese too, so you could make you a sandwich at home. And like he's mentioned, Huggins were over here. Well, back in the day, you had to have a deposit to buy Coca-Cola, a bottle deposit, or pay 3 cents. So all you folks have been here all your life, remember that Silver Hill was covered with trees like a canopy, cool to ride up and down the road. Well, on the side of the roads were big azalea bushes, huge azalea bushes. And beside those azalea bushes was a little tray that we'd ride our bicycles and everything on. Well, I always called that our bank, because what we would do is when we would get through drinking our Coca-Cola bottles, we would throw those Coca-Cola bottles into the azalea bushes. Then when we could scrape up a dime again to where we could buy a Coca-Cola, we would go look in the azalea bushes, get us a deposit to go get us a soda. But growing up in Silver Hill was just, like I said, it was a great place to grow up. Our schools were excellent. We loved our school. I didn't actually start school until the 4th grade in Silver Hill because my mother was a teacher at Robertsdale Elementary, and I rode with her until the 3rd grade. And then the government changed policies to where you had to go to school where you lived, and that's when I started Silver Hill with Miss Engstrom in the 4th grade. But every year they would have what they'd call like a May celebration. I remember they'd have the maypole out there, things of that nature. Us guys, but I'm not gonna lie to you, we hated it. But we'd have the May, and they'd make us dance and do things like that. And then what we always looked forward to was the Fall Festival. The Fall Festival was one of the ways that we raised a lot of money at the school. And what you did is you had a king and a queen in each classroom. And whoever brought the classroom made the most money, that would be the school king and queen. So your parents would make like Rice Krispie squares, candied apples, things on that nature to sell at school to where you could raise as much money for your class to where your person could be king and queen of the school. And back when I went to school, there was just the old section, no gym, nothing, just the old section, bathrooms behind it. And there was still a pile, I was telling somebody earlier today, I know I talk a lot, but there was still a pile back there of the old charcoal from where the old school had burned, where they used that for heating, still there. And there was an oak tree back there behind the school, and we would sit back there, and they had these concrete benches around there, and they had these nice little rocks that you could draw on the concrete, and we'd play paper football. But I remember growing up in Silver Hill, and we went to the 8th grade when I was here. And then whenever you graduated from Silver Hill, they always tried to make it a special occasion back in our day. And what we ended up doing for our special occasion is we had a graduation banquet over here at the Baptist Church building. But it was a great place to grow up. Like I said, we had the Huggins over here store. I remember when they came out with a 16-ounce bottle RC, because that was the biggest Coke and it had a screw on top. So you could get a big 16-ounce versus a little 6 or 8 ounce for the same price. That's what made RC. And I remember when Mr. Cooper had the store over here, and he had actually a fountain unit in there. And you could go back in the, I would call that the southeast corner back there, and that's where the fountain unit was. And you could go in there and make you a fountain. But this was such a great place to grow up. I mean, it was, you see Mayberry, we had Mayberry Beach by a mile. I mean, it was just a great place to grow up. And I don't want to keep talking too long, but when me and my wife got married, we were living in Robertsdale. And when we had our first child, I said, we have got to get us a house in Silver Hill because I want my children to go to Silver Hill School. And that's what we did. So that's how much Silver Hill has meant to me. It was just a great place to grow up. Oh, and by the way, a little history. Y'all talking about the road over there, the old Dixie Road, which is 55? That, the county purchased that property in 1954, the easement, to make that pipe. Okay. Anybody's interested?
All right, I rotated back around to me, but part of what you've heard is a lot of what Silver Hill is about. It's about the community, about the school, and my time, and Frankie's time, and Jerry's time goes back before Donnie was ever around, and so we saw how the school played a part in that. And to give you a good example, my friend Neil and I, my dad was chairman of the trustees of the school, and his dad was a trustee. And we were told on Halloween night, you don't go down around the school. Well, we went to the street light, but we didn't go to the school. Guess what? Back then, they didn't do graffiti with paint, they did graffiti with a bar of soap, and we write on the windows and do all of that. So we had the pleasure, even though we didn't do it, we weren't supposed to be around. We went down there and washed windows in the school all Halloween night, so the next morning, there was none of that on there. Remember that, Neil? Yeah. You don't forget certain things.
No, it works.
But, reference was made back to the old school that the Czechs used, Bohemian Hall, and then when they came to Silver Hill, that really kind of put our community together. And for those of you that know a little bit about Baldwin County, you know the influences of different communities, where the Germans were in Alberta, the Swedes, the Czechs, the Norwegians, Scandinavians were here in Silver Hill, went over to Daphne, Italians, the Greeks up at Malvis, and all of that. And it was kept separate in that, but we all coexisted and built off what the others did well. And I think that's what Silver Hill did. I mentioned my dad was mayor for 30 years until he died, and he coined that phrase, Silver Hill, a good place to live. And I think, I'm very prejudiced, but I think it's still a good place to live. And I think you see what's going on around us. We've been discovered by a lot of other people in that. I'll tell you one quick story about the school burning down. For the first time, that was in November 11th, '55, was the first time a holiday was given for what was called then Armistice Day. It's now Veterans Day. That was the first time Baldwin County allowed you to have a holiday. Well, that Friday, guess what? Poof. I heard electrical, I don't know what it was, but it caught on fire. And I really don't believe there's enough water in Mobile Bay to put that out after it got going, because it was built out of hard pine. And once it started, it was a breezy day. It was no end to it. Yeah, they were all, the halls were all to keep the dust down. And I remember how sad it was that night when they took the boom from Gulf Telephone and pushed the walls in, because the whole thing burned down. And, you know, some kids would say, well, wish school burned down. Well, we found out in a hurry that wasn't a good thing. And, you know, and when you think about it, my dad was chairman of the trustees, so I was a kid then, and I saw all the school people that I knew about, and probably were afraid to know about, were there at our house, and they spent a lot of time for 3 days, that Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and guess what? You've already heard it. Monday morning, school was back in session, and we didn't miss any school, but they divided up and took, I think it was in '56, the school was built, but guess what? We didn't have a whole school then. And we didn't have a gymnasium, didn't have a cafeteria. And I spent 20 years on the school board, and when I went on the school board, I found out some things about Silver Hill, and it just tells us about that. W.C. McGowan was the superintendent. I don't know if any of you remember that name. He was the superintendent, and he was a pretty, I've heard him described as conniving at times. And a lady that I know that worked for him said, when he dies, I'm gonna go by the casket and pinch him just to make sure he's not pulling something on his mouth. I found out we didn't get a cafeteria, and he had said, we don't need to spend money on that because we don't build it there, the people in Silver Hill build it. And that's exactly what happened. They had chicken fries and fish fries and sold stuff, raised money. So where the office is now was built by the Silver Hill community. And that was evidence of it. I was glad to see when we finally got a cafeteria, and then a real cafeteria and a gymnasium, and the opportunity to have the little hall up there and then to move it. And if you haven't been in it, you need to. They've done a great job of restoring it. Other couple little quick things. How many of you knew that Silver Hill had bus service before Bratz? Greyhound bus came through here for y'all. Twice a day. Right down the street here next to the post office. Was Miss Bruton's cafe, and she sold bus tickets. I don't have a lot more to offer in that other than Silver Hill is a good place to live. I look at my son Paul, and you talk about, he's standing back there, what went on in Silver Hill School, it was a different time. He could tell you, I won't name the teacher, that if you misbehave, she puts you under her desk after she hit you in the head with a book. Didn't happen to you, I know. It wasn't you, but it was you observed it.
That's why my head's so flat.
Oh, is that what it is?
Might have been Miss Lombard.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I didn't have her, my sister did. I think my brother did.
People won't let me tell.
I bet I know who it was.
It wasn't Miss Lumberg, was it?
No, I can tell you a story about Miss Lumberg.
Well, I think everybody in here
I
can.
point out one thing about the school, I'm not native Silver Hillian, but I'm proud to be here for the last 20 years. But in my backyard, I bought the Dubrava property almost 6 years ago with Dave Dubrava in it. And there was a big post in the middle of my yard with an oxygen shade roof built over the oxygen concrete around it. And Wayne told me that his daddy got that from the school out there in Burned. It was on the playground. It's got these big holes all in it. It's about this big round. And he said there used to be little pegs that you can put in those holes and you can climb up that post. And that's sitting in my yard that Mr. Andrew Bravo took and just made like a makeshift gazebo with it being the centerpiece of it. So that's what Wayne told me, is that it came from the old school. So if that's true, that's pretty cool. I'm proud to have it.
Yeah, I've got some coins at home that were in the Coke machine at the old school when it burned down. Let you know how hot it was. They melted together. It was a water. Yeah, but the only thing I can tell you about Ms. Lumberg, for those that were here, she was an important part of Silver Hill because she's a first grade teacher and taught me. And it was mentioned a while ago about music, and if you grew up in Silver Hill, you were supposed to be introduced to music because it was around you. And Mr. Bilbach taught, Papa George Lumberg taught, and my parents thought, well, it'd be a good thing for you, Carl, to learn how to play the piano. Well, I went, Ms. Lumberg tried to teach me a little bit of piano and that, but when, I don't know, a few months in, she said, Carl, what have you been doing? You haven't been practicing. Because I wasn't progressing, that was obvious. And everybody Remember Coca-Cola rulers? Yeah, y'all got Coke rulers? She said, let me see your hands. Hit you on the hand. How that helped you pay the bill to this day, I hadn't figured out. That would be as low. Yeah. But I was spending too much time playing ball and not practicing. I don't regret that.
Her heart was at school, her heart was in that
Oh,
school.
yeah. In that community.
She always wanted an auditorium. I remember when I was a kid, she'd go around town and she had what she called a grab bag. You'd give her money and get to reach in the grab bag. And she tried her hardest to raise enough money to build that auditorium, and they ended up sending that money back.
All right. Yes, sir.
I might as well say a few words. I'm getting so tired of listening to these old stories, but every one of them